Hi there and welcome to my Python crash course on the New Boston's channel. In this tutorial we'll be looking at the different types of syntax, assigning variables, looking at the different data types, using numbers, strings, different Boolean values, operators, different kinds of loops, functions, classes, and even objects. Now if half of the stuff that I've just said made no sense to you, then I challenge you to watch till the end of the tutorial, and I assure you that by the end you'll have a great understanding of all of these topics. Also, as you can probably imagine, I put a lot of work and effort into making this tutorial, so it'd mean the world to me if you could go ahead and subscribe to my channel. It should be the first link in the description. Thanks so much for that, and let's get right into it. So let's start off with looking at comments. Now comments can be used to explain Python code, and they can also be used to make code more readable. Now a comment always starts with a hash, and Python will ignore them whenever you try to run the script. Comments can be placed at either the start or the end of the line. A comment does not have to be text to explain the code. It can also be used to prevent Python from just executing that bit of code. Now maybe you don't just want one line for a comment, and you want multiple. So instead of using this, you could use triple quotes in your code. As long as a string is not assigned to a variable, Python will read the code but then ignore it. Let's now have a look at how you can create a variable. A variable is created the moment that you first assign a value to it. For example, here I'm going to say x equals to 10. So x is going to be the variable and 10 is going to be the value. Now if you go ahead and print out x, it should respond with 10. Now as I said earlier, we can use variables to assign any type of data, whether that be a number or even a word. So let's go ahead and make a new variable, and we're going to assign it to the string coding. Now if you go ahead and print out y, this is the result that we get. Now that you know how to create a variable, let's have a look at how you can change the type even after the type has been set. Now changing a type is as simple as making something from an integer to a string or a string to an integer. If you want to specify the data type of a variable, this can be done with casting. So if you go ahead and say x equals a string and in brackets 10, then x will be 10 but in quotations, and hence it will print out as a string. Now we can also go ahead and say y equals to the integer 3. Now y will be 3 without any quotation. In addition to that, we can also say that z equals to float in brackets 3. All this does is that it adds the decimal place to the end of 3, and hence the result 3.0. Let's now have a look at single or double quotes. String variables can be declared either by using a single quote or a double. Let's have a look at what the difference is. So if you go ahead and say x equals to coding in double quotes, and then we also go ahead and say y equals to coding in single quotations, the output that we get here is actually going to be the exact same. Another key thing to take into consideration is variable names are case sensitive. For this one, we're going to have a capital A, and we're going to assign this value to Python. And now we're going to have a small a right below it, and we're going to assign the value to variables. Let's now go ahead and print both of these out to see what we get. As you can see here, we get two different results. This is because the capital A will not overwrite the other. Let's now go ahead and look at data types. Now there are a lot of different types of built-in data types. In programming, data type is a very important concept. Variables can store data of different types, hence data types. Some of the data types that are built into Python are str or string for text, int or integer, and float for numeric types, list, tuple, and range for sequence types, as well as bool for Boolean types. We'll be having a look at most of these in a bit more detail in just a second. Let's have a look at how you can get the data type. So if you don't remember, getting a data type can be done by using the type function. Here I'm going to go ahead and say x equals 5, and I'm going to go ahead and print out type x. As you can see, it tells us that x is an integer. Let's now have a look at numbers. So there are two main numeric types in Python: int or integer and float. Variables of numeric types are created when you first assign a value to it. Variables of numeric types are created when you assign a value to them. Now let's go ahead and say x equals to 1 and y equals to 2.8. If you go ahead and print out the type for both x and y, it tells us that x is an integer and y is a float. Int or integer is basically a whole number. It can be positive or negative, but it cannot have any decimals. Float, on the other hand, is a floating point number, and it can be either positive or negative, but it has to contain either one or more decimals. Let's now have a look at strings. Now strings in Python are surrounded by single quotations or double quotation marks. Hello in single quotation is the same as hello in double, and you can display a string literal with the print function. You can also assign a multi-line string to a variable by using 3 quotes. As I showed you earlier, we can also use 3 quotes for making multi-line comments. However, when it's connected to a variable, it's a value. Let's go ahead and just say A equals triple quote and some sample text in multi-lines. As you can see, when we print this out, it prints out in more than one line. Now again, it doesn't matter if you use 3 single quotes or 3 double quotes, they both still do output the same result. Like many other programming languages, strings in Python are arrays of bytes representing Unicode characters. However, Python doesn't actually have a character data type. It's simply a string with a length of 1. Square brackets can be used to access the elements of a string. So we're going to go ahead and say A equals to hello world, and we're going to go ahead and print out A. But then after the A, we're going to add in square brackets and say 1 in the middle. Now before I print this out, try and have a go yourself to see what you get. As you can see here, it prints out the E. That's because the first character actually has a position of 0 and not 1. So if we did the same thing with 0 instead of 1, then it would print out H instead. You can also get the length of a string by using the len function. To try this out, we're going to carry on with our example with A being hello world. What we're going to do is go ahead and say print len and then A in the middle. This should go ahead and print out the length of the string. In this case, that's going to be 13. Let's now have a look at Booleans in Python. Now Booleans represent 1 or 2 values, true or false. In programming, you often need to know if an expression is true or false. Now evaluating any expression in Python will get you one of these 2 answers. Let's go ahead and compare 2 values. Python will return the Boolean answer. So let's go ahead and say print 10 is greater than 9, 10 equals to 9, and 10 is smaller than 9. And the result that we get should be in this order: true, false, and false, because 10 is greater than 9. However, the next 2 after that are false. When you try and run a condition in an if statement, Python will again return either true or false. We're going to go ahead and say A equals to 100 and B equals to 50. Let's also say that if B is greater than A, then print B is greater than A, else print out B is not greater than A. Now if you don't really know how if or else statements work, don't worry, because we'll get onto that in just a second. Now the bool function actually allows you to evaluate any value. It also gives you true or false in return. For example, let's go ahead and say print bool hello. And we'll also say print bool 15. As you can see, we get 2 outputs and they're both true because they're both valid statements. Now almost any value is evaluated to true if it has some sort of content. Any string is true except for empty strings, and any number is true except for 0. Any list, tuple, or even sets are all true except for the ones that have nothing in them. So again, we're going to go ahead and say bool, and then we're going to say ABC, bool 1, 2, 3, and bool a list of apple, cherry, and banana. Now we haven't really looked at list yet, but we'll be looking at that in a second. Anyways, the output here should all be true. Now even though a lot of the values are true, some are still false. In fact, there's really not that many values that evaluate to false, except for empty values, the number 0, and even the value of none. And of course, the value false also evaluates to false. To have a look at all of this, let's say bool false, bool none, bool 0, bool quotations with nothing inside, bool brackets with nothing inside, bool square brackets with nothing inside, and bool curly brackets with nothing inside. And yes, you guessed it, they're all false. Now functions can also return a boolean value, but we're not going to dive into that right now just because we haven't done functions yet. Let's now have a look at Python operators. Now operators are used to perform operations on variables and values. For example, let's use the plus operator to add together 2 values. We'll say print 10 plus 10. Now addition isn't the only operator that you can use. You can also have subtraction, which is just minus, multiplication, which is an asterisk, modulus, which is going to be a percentage symbol. Python also has a lot of assignment operators. How these work is that x plus equal to 3 is going to be the same as x equals to x plus 3. X minus equals to 3 is the same as x equals to x minus 3. And so on and so forth. There's also comparison operators, which give us boolean values, as we said earlier. These include equal to, which is going to be two equal signs next to each other, greater than or equal to, and even less than or equal to. Greater than or equal to, which is going to be a greater than sign with an equal to sign right next to it, and less than or equal to, which also follows the same principle as greater than or. Let's now go ahead and have a look at Python lists. Now lists are used to store multiple items in just a single variable. Lists are one of the 4 built-in data types in Python. They're used to store collections of data. The other 3 are tuples, sets, and dictionaries. All of these have different qualities and usages. Lists are created using square brackets. Let's go ahead and say list equals to square brackets, apple, banana, oranges. In the next line, we're going to go ahead and print out our list, and it gives a pre-expected output. Now list items are ordered, they can be changed, and they also allow duplicate values. Items in a list are also indexed. The first item has an index of 0, and the second item has an index of 1. When we say that the lists are in order, it means that the items will have to have a defined order, and that order will not change unless if you do it manually. If you add new items to the list, the new items will be placed at the end of the list. Since lists are indexed, you can have multiple items with the same values. We're going to go back to our list, and we're going to add in apple and orange again at the end. And when we print this out, we get 5 different values. To check how many items a list has, use the len function. This is really helpful to help you print the number of the items in the list out. If we go back to our list on the top, we can go ahead and say print, len, and then list. As you can see here, it prints out 5. Now inside list, you can have any data type, whether that be a string, an integer, or even a Boolean value. Let's now have a look at tuples. Now tuples are used to store multiple items in just a single variable. And once again, this is one of the 4 built-in data types that's used to store collections of data. A tuple is a collection which is ordered, however it's unchangeable, which is why it differs from list. And tuples are also written with round brackets instead of square. Let's go ahead and say tuple equals to, again, apple, banana, and orange. When we go ahead and print this out, we get the expected output. Now as you know, tuple items are ordered, unchangeable, but they do still allow duplicate values. And again, they are indexed. So the first item has the index of 0, the second is 1, the third is 2, and so on. To work out the tuple length, we can again use the length function, and for this example, we'll get 3. You can also create a tuple with only one item. To do this, you can go ahead and say this tuple equals to apple, but then we need a comma at the end. Otherwise, Python will not recognize it as a tuple. And again, just as lists, we can have any data type that we want. Let's now have a look at sets. This is the 3rd built-in data type that can be used to store collections of data. Now sets are again used to store multiple items in just a single variable. However, a set is a collection which is unordered as well as unindexed. And sets are written with curly brackets. Let's go ahead and say set equals to apple, banana, and orange. Now if you go ahead and print this out, the result will be unordered. This is because sets just don't have a defined order. In addition to that, they also can't have 2 items with the same value. Duplicate values here will be ignored. So if we go ahead and change our set variable to add an extra apple at the end, as you can see, it simply just ignores it. However, again, if you want to get the length of the set, you can again use the len command. And just like lists and tuples, you can have any data type. Now let's have a look at dictionaries. This is the last function for storing sets of data. Dictionaries are used to store data values in key to value pairs. A dictionary is a collection which is ordered from Python 3.7. If you're using a version from 3.6 or earlier, then dictionaries are unordered. But they are still changeable, and they still don't allow any duplicates. To write a dictionary, you have to use curly brackets, have keys, and they also lead into their values. Let's go ahead and create our first dictionary. So we're going to say dictionary equals to brand is going to be Ford, the model is going to be Focus, and the year is going to be 2010. When we go ahead and print this out, it prints out exactly what we wrote, but in just a single line. Now the items in this dictionary are ordered from Python 3.7, changeable, and they also do not allow any duplicates. And as I said earlier, dictionary items are also presented in key to value pairs, and can be referred to by using the key name. To print the brand value of the dictionary, we go ahead and say print dictionary, and in square brackets, we have to give the exact name of the key, which is going to be brand. As you can see here, it prints out Ford. We can also do this for the model as well as the year. Now just like sets, dictionaries also don't allow any duplicates. So if we go ahead and try and say year is 2021, then simply going to ignore the value. To have a look at the dictionary length, again we can use the length function. And for this example here, we're going to get 3. Let's now have a look at some conditional statements. So we're going to go ahead and again say A equals to 100 and B equals to 200. Now if B is greater than A, then print out B is greater than A. Else print out A is greater than B. Now if you go ahead and run this, it tells us that B is greater than A. Now Python relies a lot of indentation. Now indentation is a white space in the beginning of the line. So for example, we get rid of the indentation in front of print, we get an indentation error. Now in addition to this, we can also use the elif keyword. The elif keyword is Python's way of saying if the previous conditions were not true, then try this one. So let's go ahead and change our value of B to 100 as well. And we'll say elif A equals to B, then print A and B are both equal. In this example, A is equal to B. So the first condition isn't true, and hence Python goes to the elif statement, which is true, and hence we get the result A and B are equal. Let's now have a look at while loops. Now Python has two primitive loop commands, while loops and for loops. With the while loop, we can execute a set of statements for as long a condition is true. We're going to go ahead and say I equals to 1, and we're going to say while y equals to 1, print I. As you can see, this is going to go on forever because I is always going to be 1. Let's now go ahead and change this loop up a bit, and we're going to say that while I is less than 6, print I and also I plus equals to 1. If you don't remember what this does, I equals I plus 1. When we run this, we get 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 before the loop stops. We can also add in a break statement. So we can go ahead and say if I equals to 5, then break. As you can see here, we only just go up to 4 because the loop breaks as soon as I is equal to 5. Now opposite to the break statement is a continue one. So we're going to say if I equals to 5, then just continue. We again get up to 5. We can also use the else statement with while. So if you go ahead and get rid of the if I equals to 5 statement, then we can change that to say else print I is no longer less than 6. So it's still going to count all the way up to 5. Let's now have a look at some for loops. Now a for loop is used for iterating over a sequence. This can either be a list, a tuple, dictionary, a set, or even a string. With the for loop, we can execute a set of statements, one for each item in a list, tuple, dictionary, or even a set. So let's go ahead and make our first list. We're going to say fruits equals to apple, banana, and orange. Then let's say for x in fruits, we're going to go ahead and print out all the different fruits in a different line. Even strings are iterable objects. They all contain a sequence of characters. To loop the letters through the word banana, we can go ahead and say for x in banana in quotations, print x. What this does is just prints banana but with all of its characters separated in 6 different lines. We can also use break statements in for loops. So if we go back to our statement in the first place, we can say for x in fruits, we print out x. However, if x equals to banana, then break. So what this is going to do is it's going to print out apple, banana, and then the code is going to break. If we move the if x equals to banana part above print x, then it's only going to print out apple and then break. Now again, just like the while loops, we can also use the continue statement with for loops. We can also use else in for loop. So let's go ahead and say for x in fruits, print x, else print I'm done. And as you can see here, it's going to print out all the fruits in a different line, and then it's going to say I'm done. Now for loops cannot actually be empty. However, if you put in a pass statement, you can avoid getting an error. Now this can be used if you don't really have anything to put into the loop right now. However, you know that you're going to need it for later. Let's have a look now at functions. A function is a block of code which only just runs when it's called. You can pass data, known as parameters, into a function. A function can then return data as a result. Now creating a function is really easy. In Python, it's defined by using the def keyword. We're going to go ahead and define function, and inside the function we're going to say print hello, I'm a function. Now to call the function, we have to use the function name followed by parentheses. So if you go ahead and say function and then the parentheses, then it prints out hello, I'm a function. Information can be passed into functions as arguments. Arguments are specified after this function name inside the parentheses. You can add as many arguments as you want, just try and separate them with a comma. Let's go ahead and make a new function. We're going to define this function and call it name. We're going to pass in the argument of name. And when the function is called, we're going to print out name. Now to actually give the function what it needs to print out, we have to call the function, and in the parentheses we have to put in the argument. So here I'm going to call in the function and put in my name. As you can see, for the output it prints out my name. Now when you are calling a function, you need to call it with the correct number of arguments. No more, no less, or else you will get a type error. Now Python is an object-oriented programming language. Almost everything in Python is an object with its own properties and methods. A class is like a blueprint for creating objects. To create a class, we use the keyword class. Let's go ahead and make our own class. So let's say class, my class, and in there we're going to put in the variable x, and the value of that is going to be 5. Now let's go ahead and create an object. We're going to say new equals my class, and remember the parentheses. Let's go ahead and now print out new.x, and this should print out the value of the property that's named x but is inside the class. So that's how you can make a really basic class in Python. But now you can go a lot more advanced in that. However, for the sake of this tutorial, I won't be doing that, as it can get quite advanced. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, don't forget to subscribe to my channel, as well as the new Boston's channel. And also comment down below if you'd like to see more longer and comprehensive tutorials on Python. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.